Welcome to episode 10 of the Insecure Agents podcast. I'm your host, Ali Howe, and today we have John Sotiropoulos to talk about the upcoming OWASP Agentic Top 10. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Ali. Thanks for having me today. I'm joined with a difficult surname, Sotiropoulos. I work as the head of AI security for a UK company called Kainos, one of the top 10 AI solution providers. I'm part of the board of directors for the Gen AI security project. And as part of that, I co-lead with Ron the Agentic Security Initiative, and I work with great people like Ali to promote awareness and security guidelines. I do lots of stuff because I believe in the power of community. So I write books. I've written the Adversarial AI book, and I have written guidelines for the UK government.
I've gotten to read part of your book as well. It's a fantastic resource. I like how it's really hands-on. It's got examples of you can actually pull out your laptop, start messing around with models and try different attacks and things. If you're looking for a great hands-on resource to learn about AI security, definitely recommend John's book. Would love to hear more about the OWASP Agentic Security Initiative for our listeners that maybe are unfamiliar or don't know much about it. What is ASI? What is the work that we're doing there?
So I think a little bit of context here, Ali. As you know, the top 10 for LLM applications has become a de facto standard. And so when we're doing the second edition, the 2025 edition of top 10 for LLMs, we've had this long conversations about agentic. Do we have an entry on the top 10? Do we create our own top 10 for agentic? And we thought, well, no, let's understand the space and then decide how to advise and how to support our community of builders and defenders. And so the Agentic Security Initiative is a group of people within the Gen AI Security Project. And we have been looking at creating a taxonomy, Ali, which is the Agentic AI threats and mitigations. And, the idea is very simple that, yes, of course, there is the space for research papers, there is the space for thought leadership pieces. At the end of the day, people who build agentic applications, we want them to be empowered with specific, concrete examples. You guys are creating now a very cool application called Finbot. You're using it in DEF CON, right?
Yes, super excited to show Finbot at DEF CON.
So that's kind of what we're trying to do, like frame the conversation. So in fact, we are completing now what I call a phase of exploration of 6 months. So we released also a guide of how to do threat modeling. We're releasing this week a document on what secure architectures look like, what secure development and deployment looks like. And then to complete that cycle, we're releasing the state of agentic security and governance, which talks about tools, talks about regulations and all that. And that completes, if you like, the overall guidance we wanted to give to people across the life cycle of agentic.
It's really interesting. I feel like the top 10 has been long associated with OWASP, or that's one of the things that they know us for the most. Not just, obviously ASI, but OWASP in general. And I remember learning about the OWASP top 10 for like web applications, like way back in the day. And I think people still use that for security training. I know we have the top 10 for the LLMs, and those have been really helpful with the threats and mitigations guide, and those have been helpful in the community as well. And I think some tools, namely including Penzar, have been able to use those different threats that were outlined in the top 10 for LLMs in their products. So like when they scan different agentic systems and they find vulnerabilities, they can map those to the top 10, which is really helpful for security practitioners to understand what they're vulnerable to. Why do we need an agentic top 10 specifically instead of just using the top 10 for LLMs?
That's a good question there, Ali. So I think they're not separate. So agentic expands on the top 10 for LLMs. We have the excessive agency. If you look at LLM applications, generative AI, they occupy a broader space, a broader category. And so now you have multi-agency, you have things like tool abuse, things that we could package them within the top 10 for LLM, but I think it wouldn't allow us the space to articulate them better, to expand on some of the things that defenders and builders require to secure applications and understand those various vulnerabilities. So we could, yes, of course, we could have kept it like we did in 2025, part of the excessive agency. Maybe we could have annotated all the other threats we have there or vulnerabilities we have there. But again, we would have missed this wave that's happening today. There are key characteristics of what agentic applications and developments look like. And I think those nuances would have been lost if we just compressed it in the top 10 for LLMs.
And I think too, for people that are building agentic systems and are going to use the agentic top 10 as a resource, they should also look at the top 10 for LLMs also, because agents are using LLMs under the hood. So it all matters. It's all connected, like you're saying. Are you able to share any of the top 10 with us today, or a sneak peek, or no, if that's okay, if not?
I will avoid that. And I think I will tell you, what's happening. We are a community of people that puts defenders and builders and audiences first. We don't release something to satisfy that we've written something clever. We want something that will enable people to build robust, safe, and trusted applications. And that means actually, I would reference the OWASP Top 10 for APIs, the LLM, anything that actually brings people concrete, actionable advice, I will reference it. I'm very, very excited to announce that on August 6th, we'll do this global kickoff where we will present the draft for the community to start watching and providing us feedback. It will be a public consultation that will take a few months, and then we'll release the top 10 to the world.
Yeah, I definitely really want to applaud your work for getting the community involved, not only in these events, but the voting of the top 10, getting distinguished experts involved. We take a lot of care and a lot of time to make sure what we're releasing is actionable and it's helpful. Like you said, we're open to feedback over time. This is a living document. It can change. Obviously, AI is changing very quickly. Amazing that we've been able to go out into the community, get feedback, and then change the resources with that feedback.
We all use the word community. I think you can treat the community as an audience where you've written all your clever stuff and say, oh, look at this. It's really nice, use it. Or it's something that organically involves people with their own experiences. And that's really key for us in two different ways. A, we're making them part of the journey. So by the time we have something, people have discussed it, have engaged. So we don't have to do any enablement. It's part of the collective consciousness of the community. The other one is, it doesn't matter how clever and educated and highly sophisticated an expert is, they will not have the context of everyday experience that many of us bring. We would never release anything without experts' diligence. And in fact, we have a fantastic distinguished expert board from Apostol Vasilis from NIST, Hiram Anderson from Robust Intelligence and Cisco, people from Microsoft, the chief architect of data and cloud from Oracle, the Alan Turing Institute in the UK. So quite a kind of a select people of expertise. So that's the expert back, but it's first and foremost community driven. So it's really, really important that we bring that balancing act. And that's what we're trying to do with the top 10.
Obviously, you've had a very successful career in AI and security. What's your advice for teams just starting their AI security journey today? Can the Agentic Top 10 be a good starting place for those teams?
Absolutely. I think always is always a good way to start, precisely because we have that ability to bring high-level concepts and abstract things that you find in papers that sometimes they don't make sense into something very practical and concrete. So if you look at the top 10 for LLMs, that's a fantastic way to start. There is so much out there. It's very difficult sometimes to frame those issues. Sometimes, we get like a fire hose or on LinkedIn, this vulnerability, that vulnerability. Well, you know what? That will never stop. How do I frame the problem? And don't get too hung up on the specific vulnerability because there will be new every day. I'm sure people until yesterday were asking you prompt injection, and now it's MCP, MCP, MCP. I'm sure something different will come tomorrow.
It does feel like drinking from a fire hose at times, depending on what people are talking about on LinkedIn and such. It makes sense that the top 10 is a great resource that is actionable and concise and can be something that people can quickly get started with, for sure. Is the Agentic Top 10 a key resource for building trustworthy AI today?
Oh, absolutely. Top 10s are headlines. They help us focus and they help us frame the conversation. So, in fact, when we started the top 10 for LLMs, we said, why don't you have top 12? Why don't you have top 20? Well, you can have any arbitrary number. That's the whole point. You have to focus. You have to say, those are, for the time being, those are the key items I need to focus on. You can expand. You can find, and don't forget the top 10s, they're not just risks. We also match them with mitigation. So you have a starting point. It's like, something really easy to remember, unlike, 50 odd pages that people will forget.
Yes, that makes sense. And I think the Agentic Top 10 too can be a great gateway to other OWASP resources. So if you're wondering, okay, like there's these top 10, you know, things that I should be worried about, but based on my architecture, based on the way that I have my agentic system set up, whether it's a multi-system architecture or a RAG setup or a single agent setup, what should I worry about the most? And then they can turn to the threats and the mitigations guide or other resources to understand these in more detail. And then just to circle back to the community piece here for a second, I've noticed companies like SAP have been able to incorporate the OWASP threats and mitigation guide into their strategy. And I've also seen security companies that are creating products to scan agentic systems such as Penzar, Splix AI, and AI. They've all been able to adopt our work into their products. So, what's next for OWASP ASI?
You're asking me difficult questions now. Uh, First of all, I really like how you framed it. By taking the threats and mitigations and moving to top 10, we are sparing people from research. People in our space very often create new things and then not worrying about, how people are going to adjust. And we need to be a little bit more cognizant of that, of the usability issue that has of, the practitioners. So by starting with the threats and mitigations, that the reception has been phenomenal and fantastic. You mentioned SAP, Kainos is using it, the national healthcare application in the UK, where we talking about introducing AI features, we're using again the threats and mitigation. So, these are kind of adoption stories that are phenomenal in support of the government's code of practice here. I'm creating some supplemental implementation guides like the one I wrote at the beginning. And that again will reference threat and mitigation top 10. So I think that's the direction we're going to move. We're going to keep an eye on what's new and research. And I know Ron isn't here, and Ron is really, really keen on the research. And we've done some great research, actually. Some very, very clever people like Ken Huang, Vinith, Aidan, and I can't remember who else they wrote the agentic naming service. We're going to take this further. So we'll keep keeping an eye on what's coming up and bringing it to the fore. But really, what we want to focus once the top 10 is out, how do we make this embedded into people's lives? Because that's the purpose, it isn't just to see my name on a piece of paper, it's to make sure that people in everyday life use the agentic security instead. And then what we'll do is we'll have a nice consultation after the top 10 from all of us involved, like we did in RSA. But adoption, and practical use are the key things.
Yes, I think that's key as well. Practical use is super important because I've heard from people that I've talked to that are navigating their AI security governance strategy for the first time. And they're thinking, oh my gosh, like there's so many frameworks out there, so many resources, and they feel like they're drinking from a fire hose, especially because some of the table stakes required frameworks, such as SOC 2, for example, that doesn't have anything about AI security in it. So they go looking for other frameworks to bring on, but none of these are required. So they could choose from any of them, which makes it difficult because there's so many to choose from. But I think the ones that are actionable resources are the ones that are going to stick around over time and be the most helpful.
And I think Ali, you raise a very good point there. I think sometimes when we write those frameworks and guidelines, our obsession and our key worry is to be complete. Some of the conversations we had, I'm sure you remember them. It's like, oh, what about this? What about that? Well, for sure, but we're not going to be the encyclopedia of threats and mitigations. What we want is something, even if it misses a few points, that will help people understand and secure an application. In fact, for the code of practice, you will see it on LinkedIn. I'll publish it for free. I have created a very simplified AI threat navigator that when I reviewed with my peers, I said, oh, this is so simple. And then I reviewed it with practitioners and I said, oh, fantastic. I can understand how to use it. So we in the community need to learn that maybe we don't need to be scientifically the best. Maybe we'll have a reference somewhere, but we need to find the language and the way to make this simplified and concrete. And I think that's what you were referring to.
Yes, simple is best for sure. So people can actually get started, especially if they're just starting their AI security journey. That needs to be actionable, needs to be simple, doesn't need to be overkill.
And this is where your kind of work stream, the code sample, is just phenomenal and fantastic. We're aiming at developers. Am I right saying we have an example for every thread that we have in the threats and mitigation stuff?
Yeah, I think if not super close, I mean, I think we've got like, what is it, 16 different threads? If we're missing one, it's maybe like one or two.
Well, that's fantastic. And I challenge anyone who has written all those massive frameworks to show us how that would happen in practice. Because sometimes, you read all these kind of things and they say, oh, do this, do that. And then I think, how can someone please show me? And I think that's where we need to move towards. It's that concreteness of this is how you do things.
That's kind of the whole idea around Finbot, the vulnerable application that Helen and I are creating to show at DEF CON. It's this application built on Mostra, which is one of the leading TypeScript AI agent frameworks. And it was actually kind of hard to get it to show an example of memory poisoning. We had to use other threats in conjunction in order to get the agent to take an action that it wasn't supposed to. In practice, things are different.
That's a fantastic point there. When I was writing my book, The Adversarial AI, I was talking to someone about threats that they shouldn't be worried that much. So I tried to do model inversion for weeks and weeks. And it was extremely difficult. So, there are things that, of course, we need to be aware. Of course, we need to understand the concept. But let's try and provide some very concrete examples of how that would happen. So that people understand how to intimidate, how to secure it, and how to assure it.
That's helpful too, because in security in general, risk is all about the likelihood of the risk occurring times the impact. Because it's not likely to happen, then maybe we don't focus our energy and time on it, especially if we're a small startup and there's so much for us to do. We can't tackle every single threat.
And I listen just about startups. This is an asymmetrical game. If you look at how adversaries and research produces new threats for the bucket load, if we try to do everything, then we wouldn't do anything right. And what we'll do is we'll end up demoralized and not securing everything. So we've got to put, people talk about skill shortages. They talk about how they're so busy all the time. When I talk to cyber teams, the favorite expression that they throw at me is drowning and you're showing me the water. In other words, I have so much to do. There is a new Cyber Resilience Act here in the UK, and you just go through a litany of clause A, clause B, threat A, threat B. So we need to move away from that. And you're absolutely right. We need to focus on what's relevant.
And cybersecurity, the work is never really done. So being able to ruthlessly prioritize what's most important is very important for teams. And I think the Agentic Top 10 specifically has a great avenue to be able to be one of those resources that can help teams focus.
The whole series of papers that we have are designed to have that. And now the top 10, it will give you that compass to say, well, this is where I start and this is how I use all that. And we will discuss that on the global kickoff, August the 6th.
What can we expect on August the 6th?
So we talked about this whole principle of being expert-backed because we need to have that diligence. We cannot make things up, but also community-driven. So what we're doing is we're going to have local events across the globe with local OWASP communities getting together, having a review, a discussion, and a kind of intimate, low-key discussion. And then all of us are getting together on a global call with our distinguished expert boards that will give us their insight. And then as they went over to you guys in Las Vegas, where you're doing the Black Hat, and I'm very jealous about that. I've said that I won't be there, but to carry on the discussion, and that will bring such a diverse range of people across the globe to highlight that essence of our community, that we're inclusive across different cultures and different nationalities, supported by the best minds of our expert review board, and then kick off the conversation. And it will be an exciting conversation to have.
Looking forward to that conversation, looking forward to the events at Black Hat for sure. Is there anything else we didn't cover that you'd like to talk about today?
My message to everyone is this: AI accelerates much, much faster than any of us can do. So let's be very deliberate about what we do. Yes, there is space for vendors to create super duper projects and products. Yes, there is a space for thought leaders and researchers. But really, really, the key priority is how do we bring this into action? And there is no better place for me to bring that in action than OWASP, particularly the Gentive security project and ASI.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. And I look forward to continuing working together within ASI. And I'm looking forward to the release of the Agentic Top 10. Where can people find you if they want to continue the conversation?
LinkedIn is the place where we all congregate. Come to Slack if you're watching this. Really, really great people. And you, Helen, Rock, Ron, Jenny, I'm going to miss names, so I don't want to do that. Karen, so many great people that push the envelope, kind of making it actionable. So find me on LinkedIn, come to Slack and talk to us.
Definitely echo that. It's a great group of people and we'd love to see you in Slack. So please join. That's it for episode 10 of the Insecure Agents podcast with John Sotiropoulos, co-lead of the OWASP Agentic Security Initiative and head of AI security for Kainos. We'll see you next time.